Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Keep Crawling with Mike and Brendan. I am your host, Mr. Michael Curtis, who is coming off of a week-long jag of illness, so I am not my normal peppy self, but we will try to do what we're going to do. And joining with me, as always, is my companion in the hat.
Brendan LaSalle at your service. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And if you're watching this on YouTube, hey, we love your YouTube. We love our YouTube viewers. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that bell so we can keep bringing you all kinds of fantastic content all through the year.
We're already anticipating going. We were talking about YouTube before we went on, and how nobody leaves comments for us on YouTube.
Yeah.
So, but we're not blaming you people. You people are already here. If you're
No.
watching this post, if you're watching this asynchronously, please leave a comment. Say hey, what's up? Anyway,
Sleep.
I am rife on the dregs of cough medicine, so it's gonna be a fun show tonight, one way or the other. So. So Sleepy Fingers did not stop crawling since the last episode. Will I be now just standing at the end of season 3? We don't know I would get some of those knee pads, the carpet installers,
Carpet kickers.
Get yourself all set up. This when Mog decrees. Thank you,
Yeah.
Thank you, Sky 2, for calling back to the last episode.
So Skunkworks wants to know how your Thanksgiving was, Mike. How was your Thanksgiving?
I do not know. It was the week before last, I went down to a teeny tiny convention down in the Baltimore area. There was all total of 10 people there for the course of the weekend, and I am such a professional game designer that I managed to get con crud. I'm going with 10 people at it. So I got back to New York, and I had Monday off to recover, and I was like, and I said, I'm not feeling too well. And Brendan knows I showed up for the staff meeting on Wednesday for about an hour, and then after that I fell down and just got up today. So Thanksgiving was something that happened to other people for me this year. But
yeah,
Brendan, how was yours? It looked like you posted pictures, so it looked like
I posted pictures. Yeah, it was nice. It was a little bit stressful. I cooked this year for my family. It was like started on Wednesday, made a bunch of food, brought it to my mom's house, and then cooked a turkey and everything else over there. So it was nice. It was a little stressful. It was like, you know what? I should any major holiday, don't get up and read the news first thing, because it's going to get you in the wrong brain space. Boy, what a news day that was. But it was very nice, and we had great food. Hello, Mr. Shinobi 233. And then we ended up came home and watched the last bit of the MFT3K Turkey Day Marathon. Always an absolute joy.
Always a tradition. And unfortunately, I missed out on that this year. So
I am so sorry, cuz.
It's okay. It was not a good week, but hey, what are you gonna do?
But hey, give it up for Trooper Mike for coming back and being here on Monday night. He could have blown all of this off and left me sitting here, but instead he's made it. He's upright and he's doing it. So you got my respect, man. Iron Mike.
I was back to work today answering like a week's worth of emails, which I'm still not done with.
I hear you.
So I said the really bad ones. The really bad ones I have to send to Brendan. I'm going to wait till after the show, so it doesn't affect our working relationship right now. So.
Yeah, for when I really get what else do we have? So we want to kick off our topic. Are you ready for it?
Yes, yeah. So we have thought about some of the things that we've talked about on the show over the course of, we're now in season 3, believe it or not. And one of the things that we thought would be fun for us to talk about is game settings and the art of game setting design, because both Brendan and I have a little bit of experience in this. Either the Shudder Mountains, I did the Forlorn North. I worked on DCC Lankmar, which was adapting a pre-existing setting, and of course Brendan is the man behind XCrawl, the entire fevered setting of actually 2 fevered XCrawl settings now. So there's
yeah.
So we figured we'd talk about that and maybe get some useful advice out there for people who are either trying to figure out like what they want to do with their next campaign, what they can do with their existing campaign, if they even want to say adapt something that's already existing out there, because that's the big thing. I've noticed that there are a lot of licensed there are a lot of licensed RPGs right now. In fact, it's very difficult, it seems, to find like a wholly original, RPG any there. It's like
Mhm.
everybody's basically chasing after the licenses. So, Stonehill Dungeon is not a campaign setting. I would say no. It is a mega dungeon, which can be used as a campaign setting, as the place where a campaign takes place, but I would not say that it was a setting.
Yeah,
Um, so Brendan, let's let's start at the beginning.
this is indeed.
Here's a good place to start. So before you got into RPGs, did you have a favorite setting? Did you have like a favorite imaginary world that you would play in when you were young, when you were
In my
younger?
mind. Mhm. So there were a couple, because I spent
Mhm.
a lot of my youth in imaginary worlds, but I feel like I have to mention the biggest one first, which was Star Wars.
Mhm.
The world, the Republic slash the Empire just completely like captured my imagination. The idea of all of these different alien races that got together, that there were mechanical people that lived there and seemed to have rights to a degree, although maybe you could get erased over. I don't know. The all of that really captured me, and like the idea of technology existing alongside the psychic power of the force or whatever it was. That was thrilling to me. That was a huge one. I would say that was one of the earliest ones that like where I found myself spending a lot of time in my brain imagining myself, living there on Tatooine.
Right. Well, I was thinking about this myself because obviously, we're being of the same, roughly the same age. That was a big time too. But I mean, if you were not around in 1977, if you did not experience Star Wars, there was you had if you wanted to inhabit the Star Wars universe, you had to inhabit it in your own mind, because it wasn't like you could pop in the movie on the you pop the movie on the DVD and watch it anytime
No,
you wanted to and revisit to it. So it's whatever memories you had, and it's not like there was a whole lot of Star Wars. I mean, there was like 90 minutes of a movie, and then there was like the comic, if that, I mean, and it took
there were some novels early on. There were some
there was a Splinter in the
splinters in the
Mind.
mind's eye. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That was a crazy one. That was like,
But even though, I mean, even compared to like the embarrassment of riches that one has in the Star Wars universe these days, and the holiday special. We do not speak of the holiday special. So, but yeah, but you are right. I mean, it was definitely a captivating era, and apparently it has some legs.
yeah, I stuck around. I don't know.
So, so, so you said you had a couple, or was that? Or
I had a couple. So the quick ones. Okay, obviously there was Middle Earth. Okay, now, well, see, the Middle Earth though, I wasn't really introduced to Middle Earth until I had already played D&D. So that
Okay.
actually came second for me. But I was reading the Earthsea books before then, and those had a big effect on me. And like my early campaign world. Imagine if you took Earthsea and then stole every story from Savage Sword of Conan and put them inside of Earthsea. That was like my earliest campaign,
Okay.
attempt at creating a campaign world.
Oh, okay. So you've had some experience with this.
Oh, I mean, well, it was, the issue was that okay, basically we had two dungeon masters. We had myself and Michael Dion. And Michael Dion, he had the resources. So Michael had the whole big Greyhawk thing. He had the map and the gazetteer. So he ran his game in Greyhawk. And I just kind of like one of our other, like one of the big kid GMs had his own world. And I'm like, oh, you can make your own world. Okay. So I had this terribly drawn thing with like just Steel City and Gold Town. It was awful, just awful. But it was the beginning.
Oh, okay.
How about
Right.
yourself? What were your early imaginary world things that you completely
Well, I would
absorbed?
I would say obviously Star Wars was a big, that was it's hard to escape that, when it's, when you're that age, and but I was thinking about it, there's actually it's it's kind of weird because it doesn't really qualify as a fantasy setting, but it was someplace that that I so I'm probably one of maybe 8 people in the entire world who may hear this, but there was a line of kind of children's books that was put out by an author by the name of John D. Fitzgerald, I believe it was, and they were the Great Brain series.
Oh
And
yeah,
okay, all right, sorry. And so they all took place in like Utah at like the turn of the 20th century. So it was like 1880,
yeah.
whatever, 1890 or whatever like that. And it was just for whatever reason, like I just fell in love with this kind of imagine like I think it was like Ardenville or Ardenville or something like that. Just
Yeah.
kind of teeny tiny. It was like I could never get behind like Little House on the Prairie,
Mm.
but yet these stories like they were like Little House on the Prairie for like guys. Like I guess it was so yeah. So all right. So somebody's going to reach out the silent treatment. Yeah. So all right. So maybe more people remember this than I do than I expected. But yeah, I mean I ate those books up and I loved it. And I think that probably played like the more I was thinking about it, that probably played a deeper role in the way that I do design. And I like kind of I prefer going to like like actual historical stuff and building off of that. I mean that's like the Shudder Mountains like easily could have just been like the Great Brain goes up to I mean for I mean really it's not that far of a it's not that far of a stretch. And it's only when I started thinking about that and looking at it in retrospect, I'm like, you know what? Hey, yeah, I think there's something here to it. So that was that. Yeah, I still have a couple of them. Like I still have like one battered copy of it lurking around, but
That's cool.
but yeah, I don't know how far. I don't know how much like Southwest Utah counts as an imaginary world, but since the turn of the century, it was pretty. It was inhabited by all sorts of interesting characters and everything.
I would say it was definitely a example of world building. They created this world within that milieu that had its own, landmarks to call it. You know what I'm saying? That were really cool. Gosh, I hadn't thought about that in forever though. I'm gonna look that up now. So
Yeah.
that's really it.
So yeah, I mean the other stuff that was out there in the air never really I know like I mean the Wizard of Oz of course was out there, but that didn't really that didn't really get it for me. I think the Micronauts could have had like had a good run
Yeah.
for it, but I think the my exposure to like the Micronauts universe was such bits and pieces that I didn't have enough of a gestalt kind of setting wise to put them together. Like I wasn't even quite sure the micro like I know they were called Micronauts. I didn't know they were supposed to be like kind of microscopic.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
too
Yeah.
busy rearranging Baron Karza's limbs and putting a horse head on them, to worry about that stuff for to
Yeah.
but I think it was definitely around there.
I was a big Micronauts kid, and I kind of had I had an early shared universe where it was my Micronauts and my Star Wars guys, a couple of cowboy figures, and a few others. Actually, like one of them, Joey Royale from Pizza. I sent him all of my action figures recently. He loves action figures, so I sent him this huge tub of action figures, and he posted one up on his show. And he's cowboy body, Micronaut head, and some kind of robot arm. I don't even remember which one, but it was like just a total Franken guy that I had put together. And like there was I would say there was a very clear dichotomy. Like all of the cool looking ones were the good guys, right? And they were and all but they were mostly bad guys. And it was like the small, scrappy, Micronaut led guys. LaSalle man, yeah, Viking, that's right. And welcome aboard. Good to see you. Yeah, he called somebody statted him up. He's LaSalle man now. He's on there, and he's like, I had a Mighty Men and Monster Maker. I did have one of those when I was a kid. It was like a drawing thing.
All right. So as you were saying, this kind of like you had discovered Middle Earth when you started entering into discovering role playing games, and after you got involved, playing them and because at this point there was officially like campaign settings out there and everything.
Oh yeah.
Did you have like a favorite after that you started gaming? And with a caveat that it can't be something that you yourself created.
No, that's no, but much easier to talk about the other stuff. So, as a player, I spent a lot of time in Greyhawk, and I moved around so much. Like I feel like sometimes I know Greyhawk better than I do any city I ever like lived in. You know what I mean? So Greyhawk was really like I was really into it, but Greyhawk to me, even as I was playing it, it was kind of like a setting you could do anything with. You know, and it just had every space in there for every kind of adventure. But the one early on that really captured my imagination was Earth Dawn. You know, I thought Earth Dawn was absolutely exceptional, and the idea that like your characters are that you are the heroic age, you know, that it's not like, oh, in almost every fantasy setting it's always like, oh, well, there were ancient masters and ancient wizards who did these things that were now, but you were those guys, you know, you were the ancient ones. And then if you you know, the idea that if you did a heroic deed, that the weapon that you used might then spontaneously become this magical artifact that could get passed down, you know, that you were really a part of building this fantasy worlds that would exist then for thousands of years, presumably, and that you would be the ones they would tell the legends of, you know, and name the city after or whatever. I thought Earth Dawn was really, you know, but with the caveat, I could never get anyone to play with me. And no one was interested in Earth Dawn, but I love the setting though. So
I have to say I've been playing, role playing games since 1980, and I have never read a single thing about Earth Dawn. I heard something vaguely that there was, like lore wise, there was some connections between, between that and eventually became Shadowrun, but they were like the most tenuous looking thing. But I can't say if there's truth to that or not or anything. So
I don't know, maybe.
okay,
Certainly could be true.
no.
You know, how about yourself? Same question, but to you, Michael.
So yeah, I will admit, and I might have to turn it, but I may have to cut the quarter off my Grognard card for this, but I had the Greyhawk box set, and just Greyhawk never did it for me. I just and I think strangely enough it might have been that it was left like wide. I think like in retrospect, I know what Gary was trying to do. He was trying to provide like more of a framework rather than like a detailed setting, so you could put anything in there. But
Yeah.
I think I think for me there just wasn't enough. I mean, there's just I didn't and I never actually played anything set in Greyhawk, so I never all my experience was like just reading the stuff. So I
Sure.
never had someone try to interpret Greyhawk for me from like a player's base. So so I never fell in love with it that way. But I know it gets lambasted, but I tell you, man, when at that time when Dragonlance dropped, I was running that for my group in high school, and we had such a blast with that. I mean, it was
Yeah.
such a fun time. I mean, just because it had the fiction series, so we were able to read it and then play it out on the table and all the rest of the stuff. So it was the one that really kind of captured me, and we had a lot of fun with it. Very like high mythic stuff, and this was all everybody was kind of at the right age, and it was a mixed group of like like boys and girls and everything. So it was like that kind of emotional awakening, as well. So there was
Oh yeah.
there's like a level of romance and stuff that was going on there that which we didn't have in anything before then.
I totally
Um,
get that.
so that, and then when the Forgotten Realms came out, that had a level of and this was like the original Gray box set. That had the level of detail that I was looking for in Greyhawk that it didn't have.
Mhm.
But then of course, the Forgotten Realms eventually became you have to have like a minor, you have to have like a minor in
Yeah.
Faerunian studies in order to keep a track of what's going on here. But when the first box set came out, I was like, wow, this is a lot of cool stuff in here. There's plenty of detail, but there's plenty of open corners to play around with that you can just like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna claim this quality. And I love the fact that it originally said out like we're never gonna detail this entire country. Like so you can do whatever you want and you don't have to worry about we're gonna come along and screw it up for you. So I was like, that's excellent. I said I love that's a great idea behind a design. It's something I've never completely forgotten. So
No, no, it
um
totally makes sense.
but since I mentioned it, I do have to say that when the first ad for Dragonlance, for the first ad for Shadowrun came out in Dragon Magazine, and I've said this before, it's the Elmore picture, which is just like there's an elf decking into the computer, and there's like a blonde with a mohawk that casting a spell, and there's like an American Indian with like machine guns shooting Uzis and at orcs and everything. My friends said we took a look at that picture and we said, I don't know what this game is, but we're gonna play the hell out of this when it does come out, and we did, and we played a hell of a lot of
Oh
shit. Like
yeah.
Shadowrun was so much fun. I mean, the mechanics of it were god awful. But I mean,
Yeah,
like there was
early ones,
like
yeah.
you roll a lot of dice, and when somebody hit with like when a decker went and did like a net run, it was like, okay, the rest of we're literally going to go out and go get the pizza and bring it back because there's nothing for us to do for the next hour. So, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, and that was another one that was in the '80s, so God knows there was a licensed fiction line, so you could easily delve into that anytime you
Oh
wanted
yeah.
to. So
I just grabbed one of those novels this past year for the old Shadowrun. I think it's called Striper Assassin, and
oh
it's
yeah.
like the lady turns into a tiger and myrtleizing folks.
Oh,
It's great.
so it's not about the Christian rock band who's just like,
No.
okay.
No, I played Shadowrun as well. I came to it late though. Shadowrun had been around for a while, and when we finally got to it. But I agree, Shadowrun is an amazing setting, and the sprawl is like, that it's kind of like in my mind is one continuous thing, which starts with Neuromancer, and then becomes Shadowrun, and then Cyberpunk 2020. So I don't know. It was it's a fantastic world. I didn't get enough of a chance to play in Shadowrun when I was coming up, but I definitely appreciated it.
Yeah, I don't think I would have as much fun with it now. But I think I'm more become more like a cyberpunk purist. Like I would, I had a full cyberpunk weekend while I was down with the cold because my copy of the Blade Runner RPG finally showed up. So I've had to get a chance to look at that and everything. And then I was like, hey, wait, isn't there like a Blade Runner cartoon series anime in the series? I said, oh yes, there is. So I was yeah, it's on it was on Adult Swim. But it's I picked it up through Netflix. No, not through Amazon Prime. But it's all right. Yeah, Black Lotus. It's all right, but it's but then I was like, hey, wait, isn't there like a cyberpunk one too? And I was like, oh yes, there is. So there's one which is set in the cyberpunk video game universe called Android, which I'm having a lot of fun with.
That's cool.
They do a really good job of capturing both the video game and the kind of like the cyberpunk RPG setting. So
Yeah.
it's very enjoyable. About halfway through that.
Nice.
But yeah, so which is it's just a perfect segue to the next question. So, and now, is there anything that has come out like in recent years that you've become a fan of? Setting wise,
Oh sure. Okay, so for modern stuff, I love Deadlands, and I feel like I really Deadlands captured my imagination and made me want to like do all these things. I actually went up running 2 longish Deadlands campaigns, and then I feel like Weird Frontiers is now the spiritual successor to that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh.
And I'm super into that. Got to write an adventure for it, and was really pleased. But I thought that was there's been other weird West stuff, but I think that Deadlands came up with like a unified theory of weird, like, and here's where it all happened, and it worked for me as a story thing, and I had a lot of fun within that, and so I thought that was really cool. And then I got a heartbreaker that like never really got off the ground, but it was an old Goodman Games product. It came and it went, but it was called Morningstar. Remember that? So Morningstar, it's this world where there is the prophecy has come to light, right? And the prophecy is starting to show up all over this world. Like, suddenly in the middle of town, 25 people start shouting, a line of this prophecy, and then they go dark and don't remember why they did it. Or people will see parts of it like written in the clouds or in the trees or in the ocean waves. And it's sort of like this prophecy is sort of like, showing up and being, hey, thanks, Tim. The prophecy is showing up and like, sort of like, edging into our consciousness at the same time of all the forces of the status quo are trying to suppress it, it was really cool. I don't know. I really liked it. And I always thought, it was it was not the winner of the Wizards of the Coast setting search, but Joseph liked it so much that he picked it up. And it was so Wizards of the Coast, if you guys don't know, did a setting search. I want to say that Eberron was the winner.
Yeah,
I want to say that was And Eberron is I've never played an Eberron, but it certainly I've only heard good things, and it's you can't get into every setting, but Morningstar was really unique, and the art, the look of it was really cool. I was very excited about that, and there was even a time when I was I was starting to work on adventure ideas for Morningstar, and then it just didn't.
And just then it proved there's a reason why I came in second place.
I mean, I don't think it hit with people. I don't, but it was a fascinating concept to me. Let's put it that way.
Okay, that I think that's one of the problems with a good setting is that there are so many which are like intellectually, and I think we'll probably get into this before the hours. Like intellectually, it's a wonderful and so evocative and everything. But once you get into the actual setting, it's just like, okay, now what? I think I had a buddy of mine. He ran. I forget. It was Ken High put together the setting, which was what happens if Jormungandr, the world serpent, is killed like at the outbreak of World War II and basically falls across Europe. It's a giant, like it's a giant world serpent, like it's like the size of the Alps. And somebody, I'm sure somebody will jump in there. We played it, but it was one of those situations where like there is so much going on in this world. It's like it's really difficult to like find a good handhold because I mean it's like World War II, but there's like it's almost like the Pacific Rim. People are actually harvesting parts of the world serpent and turning it
Sure,
into
sure, sure, sure.
technology. And then there's magic as a monk, and there's monsters, and so it was one of those things. It was like it made really good reading, but it was really too dense. Like we bounced off of it because it was just too dense to it was like slamming into a solid sheer wall that was it was so dense there was nothing to hold on to. Um, but
Huh.
uh, but yeah, I mean I like Ken's work, but for just some reason this didn't work for me. But so
Huh.
yeah.
Well, that one I'm not familiar with at all, but that's
I think it was a savage. It was a savage. It was sort of Savage Worlds. It was a Savage World setting. But okay, all right. Well,
I think we have to get into. So we've talked about the influences. Let's talk about the worlds. So Mike, you created one of my absolute favorite fantasy settings, which is of course the Shudder Mountains, which I absolutely adore. And I've been let's just call me semi-obsessed. I think that's fair. Semi-obsessed with the Shudder Mountains, and it really comes through when I run it. I think in my mind, it's so this glorious and crazy and dark place. Like, can you talk about the origins of that? How that sort of like, we've talked about it, but for the people at home.
basically the where it came from is it actually came out from an image that I had in my head. And I had an image in my head. I had a picture of like a party adventurer carrying this coffin like over a mountain, like over a mountain pass. And there was like a thunderstorm going on, and like rain was pelting down, flashes of lightning and everything. And it was kind of, because I am from the Northeast and I went to college right in the foothills of the Catskills, when I think of mountains, that's kind of what I was thinking. So I was thinking kind of part of the Appalachian chain or anything. And then I said, well, there's something here to us. And I started thinking about more and more, and then I started coming like, why are they moving this casket? What all the rest of it? And then I realized is that basically what I was doing is I was adapting William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying into an adventure. And then from there, that kind of tied me into like the Southern Gothic. And then I said, well, I don't really know the Southern Gothic all that well, but I do know kind of, and then I've started that got me thinking more about Manly Wade Wellman, which is kind of the similar vibe. And from there, I realized like, well, nobody has really done a kind of like an American fantasy setting that like something that is kind of set in there. And Manly Wade Wellman did such a great job of kind of encapsulating it. I said, Joe, I got an idea. It's kind of off the wall, but what do you think? And he said, go for it. So I wrote the adventure, and as the adventure was being written, the first part of it is all kind of a hex crawl. So the setting began to design around there. And then Joe was like, well, we'll kickstart it because we have this funky wheel, and so we'll need stretch goals. And I said, well, I'll just keep coming up with stuff. And I just kept reading that there was so much stuff to pull from Manly Wade Wellman. And as I said, like when I'm designing something, I like to go back to the real world. So I started getting, copies of like Foxfire collection of Appalachian, Appalachian life and culture and everything, reading into that, and really there was no end to the stuff that I could pull into it. And just one thing led to another, and I was just having so much fun designing there that there was there was no sense stopping. Like that's like I think that's the hardest part. It's like once you fall in love with your own idea,
Yeah.
it can either be really good or it can be really bad. And
Yeah.
it's one of those cases where it worked as I was hoping to. So that's kind of that's where the Shudder Mountains came from. And luckily, I didn't know how people were going to respond to it, because it was a little off the wall for kind of the pseudo Western European fantasy setting, which is kind of like the bog standard, and most of all, I'm a New Yorker. I'm like, I mean,
Oh, I got you. I got
I
you.
have, I mean, I went to college and I tramped around the Catskills, which are, it's technically, all part of the same chain, but it's, I was just,
You didn't grow up in the culture.
right. I didn't grow up with a culture, so that's one of the reasons that I was very, aware of when I was designing. Is like I did not want to indulge in any stereotypes. Is that I wanted the Shed folk to feel like they were real people, and I
Yeah.
wanted them to have a sense of culture, and to kind of leave out any sort of Yankee baggage, which I think I did a pretty good job doing, apparently, because I've gotten really good response from people who like literally grew up in the Appalachians. They're like, this is I was like, I just tried to treat the Shed folks as if they were real people. So
No.
I think that's probably something to keep in mind when you're trying to do a setting.
Yeah.
So
Oh no, it absolutely is. Yeah. You don't want to populate a world with caricatures. You know what I'm saying? And you certainly don't want to populate it with embarrassing caricatures.
right.
You know what I'm saying? And I don't feel like that does that at all. And I had the same experience. I ran one of my Shudder Mountains adventures at one of the conventions this year, and I had maybe it was Origins, and I ran this year's holiday adventure, the Kingdom of Monsters Midwinter there, and I had a couple of guys. He's like, "Oh, I signed up for this." They're all from Tennessee, and they were like really excited to play it. Like they were using a heightened version of their real accents for their characters, and it was so funny. And they just took to the. It was, I mean, it was a goof, but it was also a really like, oh, sorry, sweetie. Sorry, I got cat attack. Esme, put Esme on the screen here in a minute. She hates getting picked up. But the people who I have played with who are actually from that region have had a lot of fun with it. And I think you really accomplished something there. I think by making it respectful to the people, by making that gave it a kind of a gravity and a realness. It's not like these dumb hillbillies that are just you know what I mean? There's real folks out there who are living their life in a harsh land, but living the way they want to live in a place that they love. And that's the thing. I think that the essence of Shudder Mountains is a deep love for the community that everybody that there shares. And I think by really focusing on that, and then by making it multi-ethnic, the way in the description, which was brilliant, I think you made something that everyone can feel like they want to be a part of, they want to live there. I love the Shudder Mountains. I'm just,
Yeah. There is a level. I mean, there not only there's a level of respectfulness, but there also is a little bit of ideal, not idealicism, but there's like a level of idyllicness to it. Like, I mean, although the Shudder Mountains are a place full of of horrible monsters and all the rest of
yeah,
it, there is to get the feeling of that this is being connected with a community, and your neighbors are kind of going to look out for you, unless there's some weird witch folk or anything. But
yeah.
and, and maybe it's just maybe that's part of the success, is because it landed at this time when I think we as a culture, we begin to feel so disconnected from one another. And I think we look for that. And even if it's just imaginary, and that, like, if you mind your manners, you can you count on like a warm cooked meal, and sit around the fire and drink some stump whiskey, and maybe somebody will take out a fiddle and play some music, and then I
Yeah.
mean, and life will go on. I think that's difficult. So yeah, and it's it's although it's not written so much, it's like I don't know if I would want to ever run a Shutter Mountain adventure with the characters as outsiders coming in, because the outsiders at some level are almost like the bad guys. I mean, they're all
Yeah.
not quite so, but they were definitely like, almost in that folk horror sense. Like, you watch like Wicker Man, it's like, like, wow, it's like, poor Edward Woodward's running around this house, but at the same time, the Summer Island folk kind of, it's kind of like Midsummer. It's like
Yeah, no, it really
guys are
is.
talking
Yeah,
about. It's
yeah.
like, that's my retirement plan right there, man. I was just like, like, if you told me that, yeah, sure, no problem. So, so I can see for that.
Oh no, it's really interesting to me. I love, like, if you think about how the way the chain coffin works. Okay, the chain coffin is an outsider adventure. You are from the outside and you're going back in. But then once we've all gone there as a role-playing game community, all of a sudden the outsiders are no longer the ones that you want. Like, it's like the initial party that goes there introduces us to the world of the Shudder Mountains, and then we're there and we don't need them anymore. And I want to tell stories with the group that actually live there. I've never thought, whenever I've got so many ideas percolating for things I want to do for Shutter Mountains, and it never involves. And then a bunch of outsiders come in, and because to me that's kind of that's almost like a, I don't know, like, oh yeah, we need these heroic outsiders with metal armor and book learning to come from outside and fix our problems. You know what I mean? Like, I love, you know what I mean? I love that the shed folk are like, nope, rolling up their sleeves. We'll take care of it, Ma. Keep the kettle on. You know what I mean? And then just that's to me a real part of the charm, is that these people, they're always going to be there. They built this place up. They freed themselves, and now they're self-sufficient and proud.
All right. Well, to avoid this becoming the Shutter Mountain show, like, we have on one hand, we have developing a setting which is based on real world stuff, and it takes a lot of effort to be kind of respectful and try to make something realistic and everything, and things. There's something you really identify with. And then we have XCrawl, which is it's just like on the opposite pole in so many ways.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's like, and then so here's what's idyllic, and here is the devil.
So this is one of the things I know we have talked about, but where did the concept for XCrawl come from?
Yeah. So just like it's I love that it's almost the same story. Just like with the chained coffin, it came from a single image I had on a bus one day of a fighter with a digital clock stuck on the inside of his shield. And in my mind, it's expanding, and he's like talking to this thief, and he's like, look, we are going to lose if you don't get your crap together. And the thief is like, do you not see me working here? I'm doing my best. And the XCrawl became like basically like this one kernel image, and then I created everything else to make a world where that image could exist and made sense, So it all came out of that, like one day driving around, and then I spent the full day of work at my old .com job, not working very hard and thinking a lot about this fantasy campaign I wanted to run for my friends. And then it kind of rolled around in my head for a while. And then one morning, my roommates were like, hey, we used to do this thing. We were all from the Renaissance Festival. And they would say, Justice called. And she, Justice was a little girl at the festival. And very often they would send her to tell you it was your day to run Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of D&D at the Ren Fest on the off days. So
this is my surprise phase.
Yeah, no electricity, but we got tables and dice. So, so they were like, okay, you're running a game today. And I was like, okay, give me an hour. And I real quick sketched out the first dungeon, had it all in my head, and then just sprung it on them. And it just kind of created this spell, and it felt very real and very unified and very, very, very dark. It really felt to me like, a place where you could really explore the excesses of celebrity culture and capitalism, and kind of like athlete, athlete culture, professional modern athletics. You know what I'm saying? United States professional modern athletics. That let me sort of really kind of get into a lot of these themes that have been playing around in my head. So it definitely plays up the excess and horrendousness of some of the things I see in our own culture. And yeah, it's non-idyllic, but it's a hell of fun. And that's the part of why it's so dark, is that you can play XCrawl just as a straight game. We are professional adventurers. We're going to do artificial dungeons. We are going to be superstars. And then every once in a while, you'll see something off here to the side and be like, oh my God, this is terrible. And just put those celebrity blinders back on and be like, nope, let's go make some more money by killing some more sentients, you know? And I think that's part of the message, is that it really is, in a lot of ways, it's the darkest of worlds, because, the dark overlord that you're supposed to fight against is in charge, and he's making sure the right people get paid and that the right people are distracted. And because of that, he's able to continue, and no one's trying to change anything because the right people are making money.
Right. And then on top of that, then you also have Drider clowns being shot at you through and teeter totters and all the rest of it. So
Also, yeah, there's a lot to look at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think one of the geniuses of XCrawl is that it entirely jettisons the idea of like dungeon ecology out the window. It's just like literally you don't have to worry about why there's a dinosaur in one room and why there's a tribe of kobolds in the next room. They're not eating each other or anything. It's like it's very much it's just like because it's fun.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
why.
yeah.
It's like because it's a challenge. So you.
And in the lore of XCrawl, there was a game called Dungeon Battle, which is my thinly veiled thing of of Dungeons and Dragons. So like all of those, they are trying to recreate in an arena what they played as kids. So I'm trying to pick. That's a big part of it. Is sort of like but also without any limits, and also having to top everybody year after year. Hence, Drider clowns with teeter totters shooting bombs at you across the rooftops. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so it's still fun to me to do to this day, and to me feels like a very dark kind of world. But if you're out there, if you have questions about world building, you got two people who built one, a couple each, and we're certainly happy to get into that. So Tim L. White asks, what tech level is XCrawl? So the world of XCrawl is it actually there are a few areas in which XCrawl has a higher level of technology because of the influence of all of the other demi-human races who are all working at things. So like agriculture is way more advanced than we have it. Farming is because agribusiness is so big. Everyone drives alcohol burning cars. People don't really use fossil fuels in the level that we do. But there are in some areas, technology is much lower in XCrawl for a couple of reasons. A main one being magic. The medicine is way, way, way behind us. If you are in the world of XCrawl, if you are rich, you're sick, you go to the temple and you give them a whole lot of money and they will cure your problem. If you are poor, you'll probably die of it if it's serious enough. So cross your fingers that and it's home remedies and whatnot. So but when you do go to the doctor, they don't have really they can't really do art transplants. They have only the most basic understanding of antibiotic substances. There's nowhere near brain surgery because there isn't that demand for rich people to need it. And because of that, everyone else gets the scraps.
I think because this is something I was thinking about before the show, and both of our discussions on where the idea for the concept of this came from, I think reflects on this. But when you sit down to design your campaign setting, I think the tendency for most people to do it is to do it like you're used to seeing a professional version of it done. Like, I mean, because so that might involve like, oh, well, I have to come up with the entire backstory of the world or whatever, and I have to draw out all the continents or anything like that. And I think that's actually counterproductive. And I think really if you are going to either whether you're going to be adapting a setting or whether you're going to be creating something new, I think it's important to focus on the stuff, like focus on like what the theme of or what you're trying to do with the setting, what you're trying to to convey with it, and think about how how the players will discover this. So you don't need to come up with the entire backstory about where the gods come from or anything. It's more important if you like, for example, if the cleric, of the local temple or something like that, think about how they would act based on, what the players are going to discover by interacting with that cleric.
Yeah.
And I think you can do this with more than um I think there was a bit of advice I gave you during XCrawl, and it was just kind of came off like the top of my head, but you were like, it was so helpful for you. And this was when you were struggling with like trying to figure out what to put in the monster section of
Yeah.
XCrawl and everything like that. And what I said to you is like, I said, don't worry about putting in like put in, like I said, monsters should be world building. That's
Yeah.
I think that what it came down to
And
it.
my head went, and I was like, oh my God, yes, and you were totally right.
Yeah, and I think like, if you're doing that for your home campaign, that's what you should be thinking about. You should be thinking about, like, because the players are going to interact, they're going to meet the monsters, and so the monsters should be the vessel to convey more about the world, or to kind of set the tone for it. I
Yeah.
mean, that could be as easy as like, well, there's going to be a lot of vampires and undead if you're doing with like something like on the Ravenloft or like a gothic setting sort of vein. Or there's going to be teeter-tottering firing clown driders, if you're trying to do things. Well, it's all holds are barred. Like there's no hold bars in this. It's like,
Yeah.
this is the setting we're going for. And with the Shudder Mountains, like most of the stuff, most of the monsters and the creatures that comes from folk tales, or at least, has at least hints back to kind of like the hidden history behind the Shudder Mountains, which
Yeah.
like the Serpent Men, or you're like, where did the Serpent Men come from? Well, there's a whole thing that you behind that if you want to find out about it. I think it makes more sense when you're doing any sort of setting design is to limit yourself to what's going to be paying an immediate dividends. Because I think if you try to write that show Bible, if that's your, I mean, like if you're trying to, if you, because that's a different story. If you're going to have other, if you're doing a major television show, you're going to have other writers working on it. You need for them to be all working on the same page. But if it's just you can just using stuff which is going to be most effectively, most immediately, and is going to get the characters hooked into. I mean,
Yeah.
they're like the players like, okay, well, I'm really enjoying this, and I can't wait to see what's in the next room, or what's in that hollow. Yeah. Um,
Absolutely. And everything Mike is saying, you enact that when you're world building. What you're going to create is verisimilitude. When your characters are learning about the world because they met this crazy monster, and this monster represents an aspect of the fantasy world that you've created that you want to focus in on, and that's how they discover it. That's how things really happen. That's how you really learn about the world when bullies first come after you in middle school, or whenever it happens to be, for however awful it is, and however awful encountering a creature that's trying to kill you would be, but those things, by allowing them to discover aspects of the world through the things that you've put in there, and not just like not just like what they would call in a novel info dumping. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, and also here's another clever idea I had about this world. That would be an interesting thing that I thought, instead of that, you have them like peel the world away like the real world and be like, whoa, that's in there. What does that mean about everything? This means A, B, and C. And those are all lessons that they'll walk away from, and it'll feel like real world lessons.
Yeah. And that's I 100% agree. I 100% agree.
Mm-hmm.
So once you had like the concept of XCrawl kind of put together and everything, you knew what you wanted to do with it and everything like that. What was the biggest challenge for you to kind of bring this to life? I mean, you had because you had it, with your kind of home group, because you're running the
Yeah.
XCrawl beforehand, and then you started, then you wrote your first XCrawl adventure or anything like that. It's like, what was there any was there any hurdle that you overcame from? You ever think we're trying to boil, because we're talking about, like how to that level of verisimilitude of like trying to
Yeah.
boil down the setting into 20,000 words or whatever it was, or what that you were first trying to kind of to develop.
Yeah. Not initially. Initially, it was just funsy dungeon time. And it was like they were all parody rooms. And like, I had a lot of fun, like describing like, if you go to see baseball, they have these graphics that would show up on there. I had a lot of fun describing the graphics on the jumbotron. That would be when they kill the monster. They'd play it like the one I would use a lot would be like the graphic adventurer would offer to light a cigar for the graphic monster, and then it would blow up in his face. And this like little whimsical thing, but then you look down from the jumbotron and here's this dead sentient guy that speaks a language in front of you, flayed alive, that they're now having fun with them. It's just like so it kind of, I will say that when it was just dungeons, it came naturally to me. With a hurdle came when it was time to actually put the setting into a book, when it came to put it to paper. Because my initial thought was when I, because I'm a knucklehead and I need a developer, my initial thought for it was like, it would just be a series of dungeons. And I wanted to have the world was going to show up in the commercials a la RoboCop, like where, they're watching TV in RoboCop and these little things would come up in the background and, it'd be like, since we lost the ozone layer, I've been using FPF 10 billion, or whatever it happened to be. And that was kind of my thought to it. And the kindly folks at Panda Head slapped me about and showed me the error of my ways. And started telling, they're like, no, we need to really flesh this world out, how it got here. And I was just like, I was coming up with just, very, I hate to say breezy, but very breezy solutions to how all of this happened. And at one point, I'm describing this at the dinner table, and I'm describing this adventure I'm writing, which takes place in St. Louis. And my mom says, so if this play takes place in St. Louis, that means that there was a Catholic church at some point, which you haven't described at all in any of this. Why is there a place called St. Louis in America, in this North American empire, if there's never been a Catholic church? And it was like, like ruh-roh. But that was the hurdle then. That was like, the choice was then either create a fantasy world from whole cloth, which I didn't want. I wanted it to feel like American athletics. I wanted it to be about America. I wanted to do an American-based fantasy, and I didn't want to have to disguise the world in order to do that. So then that was the hurdle. How do you make that work? And like that was like I had to go back down into the cave and stay out of the light for a while and make all of that work. So that was the biggest hurdle for me, was once I realized that the setting will not make sense, that the setting that I wanted to have, which was one that took place in a alternate America that had recognizable place names and historic events, because you can't do parody rooms. I have a World War I room in the first dungeon I ever did for it and such. Can't have a World War I room if you haven't had a World War I.
Right.
So how to make all of that flow in together, and that was the big challenge. And that one question that my mom asked, like completely sort of like set XCrawl on the path to getting where it was. It never would have been as good without, and who knows how, maybe I would have gotten there eventually, but maybe it would have been tonight. I would have been like, I hadn't thought about it. I don't know. I hadn't thought about it. Hey, whatever. But that was the big challenge for me. So I think that having to go over that hurdle made the setting what it was. So let me ask you, same questions for Shudder Mountains. Did you have something like that you had to get past to flesh it all out?
No, see, I didn't. I think I had so much leeway is because I was focused on a very limited area, and I could I could do what I wanted to. I think out of when it comes to setting design or trying to do this, I think the biggest challenge that of anything I worked on was, of course, with DCC and Lankmar. And what came with that is because the real challenge I had there was when Fritz Leiber was writing the Fafhrd Grey Bannister stories, he was writing them because he was telling a story. And he literally wrote these almost over the course of his entire life. The first one was like 1930 whatever, and the last one was like 1988, I think. So so 50 years he's writing these stories. He is not concerned about scrupulous continuity at times, and gamers are. So which is when you're one of those situations.
Big time.
So I found myself with literally going through all this stuff, and I would come across the things where there would be out contradictions, or or it was just like, well, it was like this and this, or like, did he make a mistake here, or, so, and then it's left up to me to, how do I rectify that situation? And that is both challenging but also very exciting for me. It's like how do I make this work? It's like, so it was and that's one of the enjoyment that I had about converting Lankmar over there, because there was stuff that's just like, this doesn't seem right, but I have to find a way to kind of explain it. It's very much like the old Marvel, the Marvel no point. Like, Marvel never makes mistakes, but I mean, when you have 100 writers and 100 artists working on 100 different titles, things
It
are
happened.
not going to So it's trying to come up with a way to make things, to maintain that level of verisimilitude.
Mhm. Well, you absolutely succeeded.
Well, thank
You
you.
know,
Which is one of the reasons, it's like, because when I said, when it comes, here's my stance. We've come into a time where every role-playing game needs a published setting. That's just the way things are coming. It's just, like, we've been going that, like, and I noticed that more and more when we have gamers who are discovering DCC, and they're obviously they're coming in from 5e and everything. And because I keep seeing the same questions about, like, what's the DCC world, what's the DCC setting, what's going on, and people are like, well, there's Aerith, and I'm like, that's my default answer is the best DCC campaign is the one that you come up with. That's the
yeah,
best setting here. But the more and more I think about it, is that there is actually an established DCC, campaign world, and it's just in the rule book, and it's just not well laid out. It's like you literally have to go through, and you have to there's all the building blocks you need for a world are there. You just need a way to tease them out and try to figure out, okay, how do all these pieces go together? And maybe there will come a day where we actually do that work for you, but until that time comes, it's just like, it's kind of working with Lankmar. It's like, read what's there and try to figure out how all these myriad pieces kind of fold
yeah.
together and tell an interesting story in an interesting setting that is going to work at your table. So I think that's the challenge, I think, when it comes to game design, in the modern era, at least for what I'm running into.
Maybe at some point, like, Joe will grab you, me, Bishop, the Brinkmans, Harley, just like make us, like, imagine we took, like, did a really deep reading of the DCC core book and use all those little weird references that are in there and use them to create this, like, either flesh out Aerith, which would be great. It's just hard for me to pronounce Aerith. Or to instead we to, like, create the DCC world. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, it's something that, it's something that even Joe and I have exchanged emails about. It's one of those things. What to do when the time comes. So plenty of options out there, and it's not something that we could leave them forgotten. So
yeah.
it'll be fun if and when that project ever comes to come. So believe it or not, we're almost up on our hour again.
Oh no!
Yeah, we feel like we didn't really even get a chance to kind of tell this.
We might have to do a part 2 of this episode, because I feel like we just scratched the surface.
We probably do down the.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, if you're interested, if you have world building questions, send them to me, Brendan at goodman-games.com, and I'll put it in the thing. And if we do get around to doing a part 2 to this one, we'll maybe we can address some of them.
So before we go, so Brendan, is there any must-haves or anything that you have when you're kind of like, I don't know. I don't even know if we have enough time to get into this right now. But I was just saying, it was like what if you're gonna just if you had to include one thing when you were beginning the setting design problems, like what would you do? What would you tackle? What would
Oh, languages. Where the languages came from? I think that's a key one. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm always stressed over that one. Like, like, do all these languages use the same alphabet? Do they sound like, if common doesn't sound like English, then can I still make puns in this world? You know what I'm saying? See the Wheel of Time for someone who does a bad job with that. So
very Tolkienian of you then. We're very concerned about language in your world building.
It should just be in the background, though. Like, I want to know that. I don't necessarily need to let them know it, but that's something I would tackle in my head first. How about yourself? We have time for it?
What can I expect to find for sale in your average small town?
Oh, good one. Yeah.
I think
Basic economy and
that
supplies.
answers a lot of questions, because that's something that's going to affect the characters, or directly. Like, can I buy a horse, or is there plate mail for sale, or or how much does a replacement longsword go for? That's it. Or can I buy a flintlock? I mean, that tells a lot about it. So I think so.
Absolutely.
But I would say that more and more for GCC, here's my go-to is that if you are going to design a new setting for GCC, whether it's for something you want to publish or something you want to do for home, make a custom zero level occupation table, because
Yes.
so much about your world in 100 entries or less. Because it tells you, what the tech level is, what the level of government is, there's so many answers you can get through just by going through that. So I think
who's farming the gong?
exactly. So,
Well,
all
this
right.
was really fun.
Yeah, it's been fun. It definitely feels like we need to delve into this again in a future place. Probably after some time when I've not been sick for a week. So
Yeah. Get some rest.
But as you know, every one of our shows has a sponsor, and do you have the notes? Who sponsored us this week?
Why, I absolutely do. Today we're going to give a shout out to the Gazetteer of the Known Realms, which is
DCC number 35,
yep.
believe it or not. So here we are, DCC 102 is out, DCC 103, 104 are also in the works, everything like that. So a long time ago, but so if you ever want to grab one of those and see where DCC came from, but not what it is anymore, it's very interesting. So all right,
we've moved on, baby.
All right, so that's it. We're gonna be out of here. We will be back in 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Thank you for the well wishes and everything. I'm feeling better, much better than well. And so we'll be back in 2 weeks, and maybe for a little keep crawling in space.
Good night.